Hello and welcome to Preemie Chats. Sorry for a little bit of a delay with some technical difficulties to get things started here today, but I'm glad that everyone is here. We have our guests with us and we're going to have a fantastic conversation today. I'm your host, Jenna Morton. I'm the preemie mom to 32-week boys who are now 10 years old. Preemie Chats is a creation of the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation, also known as CPBF. The foundation is a parent-led charity that helps families during and after their NICU time through education, support, and advocacy. You can visit our website, canadianpreemies.org, where you'll find all kinds of resources, links to our previous Preemie Chats, our podcast, and most importantly, you will find a community of parents and professionals who are working together to help our children thrive. Today's discussion is very much based around technology, but also around parent interaction. So we do hope that you will join us in the comments, share where you're tuning in from, ask questions, share your experiences as we go through our talk today. And today I'm thrilled to say that we have two neonatologists joining us. I'm going to introduce them both and bring them on screen now. First, I'm going to introduce Dr. Karel O'Brien. She is a staff neonatologist at Mount Sinai Hospital in Toronto, as well as a professor of pediatrics at the University of Toronto. And her name will be familiar to many of you who have followed the evolution of family integrated care, or FICare, which is a practice of, and I was about to bring her on screen and I think I lost her. Oh my goodness. I'm not seeing Dr. O'Brien anymore in my room. She was there a moment ago. Hopefully she'll be able to rejoin us. Thankfully, we are also joined by Dr. Neil Patel, who's joining us from Glasgow in Scotland. He is a neonatologist at the Royal Hospital for Children. He's also the clinical lead of the West of Scotland Innovation Hub and works to bring FICare to that country. Welcome to Preemie Chats, Dr. Patel.
Inviting me to be on the podcast today.
Thank you so much, and it's very fitting that we're having some technical difficulties as we're talking about technology in the NICU, of course. I'm wondering if maybe to start us off, if you could just, for those who might not be familiar with FICare and that concept and what it means today, where it's come from, maybe if you could give us just a little bit of a background around that, please.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. It's really fitting, actually, that your other guest is Karel O'Brien from Mount Sinai in Toronto, because Karel really started and inspired our FICare journey, our family integrated care journey, in our own neonatal unit in Glasgow. So it's an absolute pleasure and a kind of full circle to be here with Karel today. And I see that she's just joined us as well. Hi, Karel.
Hi everyone. Sorry, I thought the sound problem was at my end. So
No, I would say it's very fitting that we're having some technical bubbles as we're discussing technology in the NICU. It's very fitting.
That's so funny. No, it's fantastic to be here, Jenna. Thank you for inviting me to be at this podcast today. It's great.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Patel was just going to give us a little bit of a background, a short idea of what FICare is, and talk a little bit about how the two of you have had a bit of a journey together with it.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely, Jenna. And I was just saying it's really fitting that Karel's here with me, because I'm sure she can take the story even further back than I can, because as I mentioned, our journey in FICare started really when I met Karel and heard her and her colleagues talk about this concept of family integrated care. And we were fortunate enough as a team to come from Glasgow, together with a number of my nursing colleagues, psychology colleagues, and other neonatologists, to see the program that Karel had developed for family integrated care in Mount Sinai, and to take the inspiration from that and start to bring it to our hospital in Glasgow and to other settings within the UK. And fundamentally, for us, at its heart, family integrated care is about supporting parents to be parents in the neonatal unit, and to support them to be directly involved as primary caregivers for the sickest and the most premature babies, supported by the neonatal team as partners in care. That's the principles that we're trying to instill for families and for our colleagues. And for us in our journey of adopting that approach, a lot of it was around culture change, of shifting from a previous culture which was around the professionals as the primary caregivers, and sometimes sadly the family and the parents as onlookers to that, and really changing that culture to one where we absolutely want to support families to be families and to be looking after their own babies. I'm sure Karel can expand on that as well.
No, that was a really great description, Neil. I think you really captured the essence of family integrated care. And I think sometimes it gets lost in people fussing about little pieces of it. But in fact, the essence was trying to find a program that would facilitate parents to be engaged as parents, so we could grow them as parents and grow the babies and parents as a family in the NICU. And that was the intent. We came up with these sort of, can you hear an echo, or is it just me at this point? Sorry. It's okay. All right. So we came up with pillars of FICare to support that engagement. That the pillars were really around supporting parental engagement. That was the aim, and the pillars were designed by families in Canada for families in Canada to help that engagement. And those pillars are not always translated directly to other sites, depending on what the resources are, or the types of families they have, or many other things. But what's important, the whole focus of the program was, I think it was the first program of its kind, to actually really look at supporting parent engagement, not just providing parent knowledge or information, but truly supporting parents to be parents.
I was one of those parents who was lucky enough to have FICare part of the practice of care as we were dealing with our NICU journey to start. I'm wondering, Neil, if you could share a little bit about that idea of how you kind of shift the culture among your staff, because for parents going in, they don't know any different. It's the first time every time, but your staff would have had to have a lot of shift.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And I think, as Karel said, what we were lucky to have was that framework and those pillars that Karel and colleagues had developed at Mount Sinai, that we could take as kind of core principles or areas of work within our unit. So around parent education, family education, staff education, environment and resources, and also this idea of supporting peer-to-peer support between families. And that gave us some overarching structure, but then we appreciated pretty early on that it couldn't be a top-down process. We couldn't tell our colleagues, or tell particularly our colleagues, but less so the families, but tell our colleagues how to deliver family integrated care. It needed to kind of come from them and the families together, and they needed to see for themselves why this was an important approach. And I think in retrospect, I would love to say that we designed it this way, but I would say we were just lucky that we found something that really was at the heart of being able to make that connection with families and help our colleagues to understand this approach. And it was actually something really, it sounds really simple, but it was actually very fundamental and profound for us, which was simply creating an opportunity for families and staff to sit down together and in a really open and honest way, just to start to talk about what families' experiences were in the neonatal unit and how they would like things maybe to improve and for themselves to be involved more. And we just needed to seed that conversation a little bit with the right questions, and then the families themselves helped to really catalyze it. And we started these regular meetings. We had them once a month, very informal, lots of baking and tea and coffee to get people into the room and chatting. And that group that formed, which was effectively families who were in our units, plus some families who'd already been discharged but would like to come back and share their experience, and really an open invitation to colleagues from all aspects of the neonatal unit. So nursing staff, allied health staff, neonatologists, chaplains, students, anybody who wanted to come. And that group developed a name. The name was chosen by families themselves, and that absolutely expressed the culture of it. And they called it Hug, Helping Us Grow, and that's stuck ever since. And we have our meetings every month or so, and they're really just an opportunity for us to, with the right questions, get families talking about their experience and where they want to improve, and then get ideas forming from families and staff together. And really what we appreciated we're giving was permission then for the families and the staff together to take those ideas and to put them into practice with that framework that Karel described as well, as a kind of overarching structure to it. So that's how we got started, and it worked so well for us, and it became a ground up thing, a really grassroots process.
I wonder, Karel, if you wanted to speak a bit about that idea of the grassroots, and specifically with the idea of how things have evolved and are continuing to evolve in terms of bringing technology into the conversation.
So that's a really good question. So I think changing culture is probably the biggest challenge of our NICUs, and it's constantly evolving in response to different challenges at different times. So, for example, just talking about technology, really our biggest challenge over the last few years, of course, was the COVID pandemic and what that did to our hospitals. And I know the Canadian Premature Baby Foundation have done some amazing work to support families during that difficult time. But one of the things we really found is that family presence in the NICU, for whatever reason, was markedly decreased during the COVID pandemic, and many hospitals limited either the number of parents who come in or the time they could come, or put some restrictions around parental movement in the unit. So Neil and his group had actually worked with a specific technology that we actually decided that we wanted to try in our NICU as well. But in the meantime, in the last few years, if you look at the literature, there were a few other technologies that people were also looking at. And all of them, the idea was to use technology to provide, I think, to facilitate parent-infant attachment. One of the things I think we had to be really cautious about, even during the COVID pandemic, is to make sure, we sort of heard people were investing in this technology now that parents were not coming in as much, or there were restrictions. And there was some idea, well, this is what we're doing, and this is going to make it all good for parents because we have a video or we have a messaging system, whatever. But I really want to emphasize that no matter what technology we use in the NICU, none of it replaces parental presence in the NICU. They all support parents. The idea of this technology is to support parents when they can't be there for whatever reason, whether it be distance, whether it be disease, that their own illness, whether it be fatigue, whether it be parents working, whatever it is, but it should never be seen as a replacement for parental presence. And I think that's really important, no matter what technology we're looking at. And it's not an excuse for a unit. I'm just going to say this. It's not an excuse for a unit to put money or resources into technology if they haven't already made sure that they've got an, open visiting policy, not open parental presence policy. I don't call it visiting policy, open parental presence policy. And that if they've not put resources into supporting parents being at the bedside, that's our primary aim. And these technologies are just an addition.
I think, like you say, it's so important for everyone to make that clarification that it's about enhancing, not replacing.
Correct.
And I think, parents, certainly in my experience, we see it that way, is how can I stay in almost constant contact, but in a way that still protects my safety and whatever else is happening in family life. I know, Neil, you've got a bit of an interesting story about kind of how the technology we're talking about came to be. So I'd like if you could share that with us, please.
Yeah, sure. And when I completely agree with Karel, our main priority is to support families to be with their baby there in person. And I suppose we also do recognize in reality there are times when they can't be there. And that's when the technology is there to augment that, not to replace it. But this particular technology arose absolutely from parents themselves, which is why it's such a great technology and such a great story for us, because in one of these meetings that we have with families where we're listening to their challenges and their ideas, one of the fathers who'd been in the unit for some months because his baby had been with us for a number of months said, look, I've got to start to return to work. And he said, I work as a mechanic at one of the big dealerships that's not too far from the hospital, and actually has branches all over the country in the UK. And he said, we have this system when our customers' cars come in where we use a tablet and take a video, short few minute video. You get to meet the technician and you get to see what the problem is. And we think that's really good in their setting up a relationship with our customers, because they get to see that we're actually showing them a real problem with their car. We're not making it up, and that they get to see who's been working on it. And I don't know if maybe you have the same thing locally with yourselves, but I've certainly had that experience of when my car's been in the shop. And he said, can't you send me a short video so I can see my son when I can't be with him? You know, I want to be with him. I want to be in the unit as much as possible. When I can't be there, can you help that connection? And we all sort of, as always, we like to be receptive to parent ideas, and we like to try and follow them up. But I've got to be honest, I thought this one would be a tough one, because, of course, there is so much important security and governance around us sharing any media that includes patients in our unit. And we knew we couldn't just use WhatsApp or email or anything like that. They're not approved systems. And we looked and that we couldn't find a system that existed to do this. I actually spoke to the company that provides the main automotive video systems, and they weren't interested. They said it's not in our business model. So I just Googled and happened to connect with another company who had a secure video technology that uses the cloud, that allows users to share short videos with registered users. And I dropped them an email and got an immediate response from the founder of that company, a guy called Ben Moore. And he said, I've never been in a neonatal unit. I don't know about them, but tell me more about this problem. So I told him the story I've just told you. And he said, look, we've never thought of using our technology in a healthcare setting, but why don't you give it a try if you can get permission? And again, I thought at this point that probably the colleagues in our organization, from an IT security point of view and from a data governance point of view, might not approve us to even give it a try. But what was really, really important actually was the fact that families were asking for this. And that they actually said to me, look, if families have asked for this, we need to give it a try. We need to find a way to do this. And that was a really important learning point for me, that whenever we're trying to do anything for families in our unit where we're worried that there's going to be organizational barriers or obstruction, actually the importance of us having the families with us and their voice, not the clinician's voice, is so powerful. And that allowed us to pilot this in March 2017. I think it was March 2017. And I had not appreciated myself what an impact it would have. But I remember the first 3 or 4 families we tried it with, every single one of them just had this amazing reaction to being able to receive this additional connection with their babies when they couldn't be with them. These short little videos recorded almost always by the nursing staff on a secure tablet, uploaded to the parent account, which they pre-registered, and the parents get an SMS or an email, and it says, you've got a video, you've got a message from the staff of your baby. And all of them said to us that this is amazing. This is helping us to create a connection when we can't be there. And we want to help you share it for other families in the unit. They all wanted to go and fundraise and buy more iPads for us, more tablets for us, so we could record more. And that was the beginning of us understanding that actually this was having a big impact beyond what we might have even anticipated. So it's been an amazing story, and from there it's just scaled, and I can share with you what the journey's been if that's of interest a little bit more. I'm sure Karel and colleagues can share their experience as well. But the reality is that it's growing every day. Through COVID, as Karel said, when there were all these challenges particularly driven by infection control and all of the wider societal barriers to families being able to be with their babies, there was even greater need for us to try and create connections, and it became more important there. And we've done some multi-center evaluation to look at the impact it's had. And again, that has shown an impact for families beyond what we even anticipated early on. So it's been an amazing story. It's been an amazing component of our own unit's delivery of family integrated care. But as we've said, it's only one component, and it's augmenting their very much this focus on helping them to be present and practically involved when they can be present, but then support when they can't be present as well. And one of the really important things that we've found is that it's improved or created connections with patient families and staff in the unit, with colleagues in the unit. I always say, because these are short recorded messages that the staff have taken the time to record and to send, it's like a personal message or a personal love letter, So it's not just like having a passive view of your baby. It's something that there's a step in there that involves the staff, and that is important in the relationship between families and staff as well.
Yeah, I can fondly recall our nurses sending pictures of our boys. I had shared that we have an older daughter. I had done, monthly photos of her when she was born. And that was one of my first big moments when I realized I couldn't do a 1 month photo of our boys like I had done with her, because they were in the unit and I was overwhelmed and had a toddler at home. And next thing I knew, here was this picture with the little sign, like, we are 1 month old. And it's still one of the most treasured possessions I think that I have. And it was that, like you say, it wasn't just about getting the photo. It was what went into the thought process of taking it and sharing it and creating that connection. And we still see some of these nurses 10 years on and have those moments because of that. And so I'm wondering, Karel, if maybe you wanted to talk about what you've seen from these kind of interactions as, the healthcare model has been changing and these relationships are growing between staff and patients.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think it's not been without its challenges, Jenna, unfortunately. That's one of the problems we have with technology. And so first of all, when we introduced this technology to our NICU, it was during COVID time. And one of the things we definitely, in our evaluation, which we're trying to get published now, but one of the things we've seen is, like Neil said, definitely parents love it. If when they can't be there, being sent a picture or a video is fantastic. One of the challenges, of course, with any technology, and you read this about any technology that's been introduced to the NICU, is how do our staff integrate it into their workday so that it's not seen as extra work, but it is seen as being sort of a fun thing to do, a thing that they like to do. It's a way of developing their relationship with families. Definitely staff who have sent the photographs have said that it has helped them feel more connected to families, and they do realize the benefit to families. I think our challenge, I know in our healthcare system, both in Canada and probably in the UK right now, has been our nursing handover, particularly the shortage of staff. And it's really, to make this sustainable in our unit, is going to requires that people see this as making their day better, not just the same, but actually making their day better. And I think, I think perhaps the missing piece that we may have not done as well as Neil and that group did, I think is going to be, I think we're going to need these parent staff meetings where staff immediately get the feedback about how good this technology was for the parents, and how that personal connection with parents both is not just good for parents, but rewarding for staff, and will make them feel better about their workday. And that's what I think we're all in this business because we want to feel that we're doing good work, not just that we're clocking in the hours, but that we're doing good work and it's having a good impact. So I think, we can do better with this technology in our NICU. It wasn't that it was unsuccessful, but I certainly know that we can do better. And I think that would be our aim. I think when I look at other technologies that have been used in other, because I think it's not just about this one video messaging system, there are other technologies. And I think it's the same issue with all the technologies, whether it be some units I know have constant video cameras over their babies. Some units That's probably the biggest one that people use, is the continuous video camera. And again, it in some ways it can in fact damage that nurse parent relationship if not introduced properly, if both groups are not well supported, if people feel that it's creating a barrier rather than a facilitator. So I think we have to be really careful about introducing technology into our NICUs. So that was my one. That was my learning. So I think it's been great, but I do understand that it needs constant nurturing, and we're going to have to work at it to make it better, because it is really important for families and for staff. I really think it is important.
I think it's interesting, you know, when you first think of the idea of introducing technology in a medical field, it is very much first of mind. I think that those issues of privacy or cost, but to think about those various ways in which it's really more of a relationship challenge as well is very interesting. I'm wondering if both of you could share a little bit of maybe what you think we as parents or healthcare providers, you know, everyone who's part of this Preemie community, what else can we be doing to help move this forward, the use of technology in the future?
That, I think that's a great question, Jenna, and it's interesting. This is one of a number of innovations that we've been involved, I suppose, with partners in developing, some successfully, some not successfully, and it's been a really learning journey. And I suppose some of the learning for me is that as families and as patients and clinicians and clinical teams working together, our role in the innovation journey is really to help explain what the problem is that we want solved and what the challenge is that we want people to solve. It's easy for us to get a little bit starry-eyed about technologies, you know, whether it's AI or something video-based or some amazing gamification of some process that we think will engage people. And we're guilty, I think, often of seeing these things and then kind of thinking backwards to, okay, how could we use that in our environment? Whereas the journey should be in the completely opposite direction, where we actually think really hard about what are the problems we want to solve. You know, what are the really tricky problems for families and for babies and for staff? And then we are better at explaining those to the people who can help develop the solutions, you know, the technologists and the innovators and the data scientists or whoever that happens to be, rather than the relationship being kind of this reversed one, if that makes sense. And we're learning about how do we really go through this initial kind of what we call discovery phase of saying what are the problems that we really want to solve, the ones that are going to have the biggest impact, whether that's in terms of a better experience, better outcomes, adding value, adding sustainability. Environment is important as well. And then if we can find the right problems and explain them in the best way, then we're going to get people producing the best solutions for us, rather than people trying to sell us or shoehorn to us something that was never quite designed for the problem we really had. So that's where we need some help sometimes. We need people who understand this design process to help us really explore those problems and explain them properly to people who can help us solve them.
That's amazing, Neil. I think you've really hit the nail on the head. We really, in the NICU, most of us are like technology to some degree. That's how we've been able to push the limits of what we do. So I think, but for these sort of solutions, I think it's really important that we have the parents' needs, the infants' needs at the outset, and that's what's looked at. There are lots of firms, there are lots of businesses who want to get into our NICUs and provide technology. So I think Neil's approach is really, really critical. I think your question about what can families do, one of the things that was really, really important, no matter what technology we introduce into the NICU, not only are parents involved at this sort of designing what they want, but also in the implementation piece. So one of the challenges, Jenna, was our nurses were really concerned that families, for example, would have an expectation of getting a video a day, let's say. And what would happen? Would a family be really upset or angry if they didn't get their daily video? So we had to, in fact, families who were with us on the sort of implementation committee were clear that as long as they knew upfront what they were signing up for and what their expectations were, that they'd be fine with one a week, or like you said, the one a month, even if that's all their staff can do, because, you know, as long as they know what those expectations are and it's clearly communicated, and then we can, the expectations will be shared. So I think that's really important. I think no matter what technology we're using to improve family experience in the NICU, we need to have clear, the families need to tell us what they need to make it work. The staff need to tell us what they need to make it work. and then perhaps we can reach out to the companies to improve whatever we're going to use to make it work better for everybody, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. It makes perfect sense. It is such a complicated, you know, multi-tiered relationship, right? Everyone kind of has their own little part to play that is equally important, and what all comes together to have that, you know, that solution that does actually work. I guess, you know, the being able to actually have something when you're not able to be there in person, though, I think is just so powerful. And we actually have a short video that I wanted to share that was sent along with a few parent voices talking just about what the impact of technology is. So if you'll allow me to play that.
A part of her birth story are pictures of precious moments not taken by mom or dad, but by the nurses at the St. Boniface Hospital Neonatal Intensive Care Unit, where Annie stayed for the first 88 days of her life.
Christmas morning, we woke up to pictures of her without her CPAP mask on, so it was the first time we saw her face, and that was just a special moment to have those pictures.
But Kelly says the most reassuring ones were of Annie peacefully sleeping at the end of a tough day.
It was just those moments of like, yeah, she's okay. I can look after myself because I know she's fine.
I remember getting the first photo and I was up at 3 a.m. expressing, and then an email comes through and you get this lovely picture, and it usually has a message saying, "Hi mummy, hi daddy, having a lovely evening." You have to leave your babies and you feel so guilty leaving them, and to know that they're in such safe hands and with people who care enough to take a picture and just send it to you to make you feel good is amazing.
I get goosebumps just listening to those parents talk about how important it was to them to have that connection, and how what stood out for me too is that, you know, the healthcare team took the time to make sure that the messages were coming from the children. It's not a very clinical, this is your doctor checking in and letting you know what happened with the stats, and no, these are heartfelt moments of your child connecting with you, which is one of those things that's, you know, the hardest when you're not able to be there all the time, I think.
It's funny you say that, Jenna, about this isn't just your doctor telling you what's happening, because when we first started using this, that's kind of how I thought we would do it. You know, it would be like the senior docs on the round or whatever saying, okay, you know, what we're doing today is reducing the CPAP or going up on the feeds or whatever. And like straight away when we started using it, it was clear that's not what families wanted, and that wasn't what the staff were going to use it for, which was really interesting. And for me, but so much powerful that it could be used in other ways. There are two other things that came across there, I think, that struck us and that we hadn't anticipated. One is the fact that when mothers were receiving videos and photos, perhaps in the night when they were up expressing, how that supported them to express. And we've heard that consistently, and it came through in our evaluation that we published as well. Again, we hadn't anticipated that potential benefit. But the other side of it, and it goes perhaps to what Karel was saying about making sure that this is something that is expectations are managed and it's properly supported, and that is actually the hardest part about it is actually making sure that it's equitable, that everybody is getting these benefits, and that the staff appreciate what the benefits are, because there's no question for some families it's harder to make sure that they do receive these things, you know, and some of those barriers are cultural, and some of them are language related and otherwise. And one of the key developments of the service that we've seen as important is the fact that it's now available in multi-language. So I think there are 12 languages or so at the moment that families select when they register, so that what they see is in terms of the functionality of the services and the languages that they understand. Still doesn't mean that the message they receive from staff necessarily is in that language if they're recording voices and things. That will take a bit more time. But making sure that we're not generating more inequity in when we introduce any technology into the unit, I think is really important, and that we're actually using technologies to address inequity and make sure that we're reaching everyone, including harder to reach groups for whatever reason, whether that's related to socio-demographic factors, language, access to technology. That's really important. But it's great to hear those benefits that those families appreciated. And I think another benefit that we hadn't anticipated is how the memories created built over time, and that's why it's called a diary service, I think, and that's important, and especially important for families who perhaps don't take their babies home, and we've certainly heard a lot of positive feedback in that regard from families who saw it as a really important part of their memory making of their baby's time in the unit.
I totally agree. I think thank you, Neil, for bringing that up. I think that's one of the benefits of technology, is I think it can be used to address some of the issues around access and diversity and inclusion. And I think that was one of our hopes. It was going to be for families who couldn't be present for as much in the unit. And I think, all technology, when we're looking at whether it be parents being facilitated to be present via technology and rounds, or whether it be parent education that's been provided through technology or this video messaging service, we do need to be really careful that all parents have access to them, and not just those who ask for access, and not just those who scan the QR code and find their way there themselves. Because if the poster in the unit is not inclusive and doesn't have in many languages, the parents won't scan the QR code. So there, I think this is the next generation, our next sort of level of addressing these issues is certainly underway right now. It's fantastic that this video messaging service is now available in other languages, and I think that's something that we're really has really helped us in our unit.
And just touching on that idea of connection and family and who this helps and accessibility, we do have one comment that we'll bring up to share there. Fabiana saying that she wished she had this technology when she was in the NICU, so that her family abroad would be able to make those memories and those connections and be part of the journey, which is another element that we haven't really touched on yet in this conversation, but is also a very important part of what this kind of video or even messaging software can bring.
Absolutely. I think that's, when you sort of realize how far we've come in the NICU over the last few years. If you remember, Fabiana was there, we probably banned cell phones from the unit. So parents could not take photographs. And so this was a real challenge. And when you go home, you're not going to have time to write a blog or a diary about your experience unless you're very dedicated and organized that way. So anything that facilitates that sharing that story and getting support from external sources, I think is really, really important. And I know that families have definitely, and Neil probably has a lot more experience with technology than I have, but certainly that's one of the joys, is being able to share the videos and photographs with other family members. It's been really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we've been hearing as we have more conversations with families and how we discuss how technology can help is actually around that. It's for all of us the fear of the unknown, isn't it? And you can imagine we for any family coming into a neonatal intensive care unit, but then also for their wider family, not being able to understand what they're going through can make it harder for them to support them. And one of the things we've been inspired by actually from other neonatal units was their use of virtual tours, where you look, it's a really great app where you can put yourself in the neonatal unit and you can walk around it. And then within that, there are maybe short videos where you hear from other families and from staff members, and there's information, again, in different languages, ideally for everybody. And so we're actually producing one at the moment for our own unit. And I was delighted earlier this week because then our midwife colleagues asked if we could also extend it to the labor ward so that mothers can see that before they come in. And I think that goes for all of us. Whenever we're fearful about going to a new environment, if we can visualize it first, meet the people who are there, who we might meet when we go there, that starts to allay our fears a lot, doesn't it? And same applies for our extended family. If they can imagine where their loved ones are, it helps them to connect with them. So another use of technology that I think is hopefully really helpful in neonatal units. And someone yesterday was talking to me about, can we turn that into a virtual reality tour, especially for perhaps people who have a heightened anxiety about coming into a neonatal unit. So again, if that's the right solution for the challenge, then I'm fully supportive. But let's understand what the challenge is first that we're trying to solve, and if that is the right solution for everybody.
That's so important to think of that idea of how much you could help relieve some anxiety and stress for families to be able to have that kind of tour. And that's the type of thing that, doesn't put too much of an onus on your healthcare workers. It's something you record once, and it's good, for several years before something would change in your environment that you'd have to do it again. But the benefit of reducing that stress of people wanting to know, or even, once you're in that, you're like, I was there today, but now I'm home and I'm trying to remember, where do I find this? What was that thing over in the corner again? Having that ability to go back would be, so beneficial.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think anything that would actually allow parents to settle, to feel part of the unit, to be able to move on to their role as parents rather than being fearful and sitting at the bedside sort of frozen. Anything we can do to actually make them be able to take in the information, to spend time with their baby, doing what they need to do with their baby, and that they can learn about what's going on. Those are all, anything that we can do, that sounds like a really smart thing to do. So I think, no, that's a great idea, Neil.
Yeah, well, as I said, Karel, we can't even take credit, to be honest. We saw it first working for a couple of other neonatal units, one in Edinburgh in Scotland and one in Dundee. And happily, we were able actually to then engage with one of the parents who had created it for the neonatal unit in Edinburgh, and he's doing it for us in Glasgow as well, which is fantastic connection that it's parents who are actually helping us to create these solutions for other families. So yeah, it's great to see the technology being shared between units as well. And another technology that we actually saw from yourself, Karel, in Mount Sinai was the fingerprint scanner, the biometric scanner, where families let themselves into the neonatal unit. And as far as I know, we stole that idea. We love stealing great ideas from other places. And we were able to get it into our own unit in Glasgow. And then so many units across the UK came to us and said, what did you which technology do you use? Where did you get it from? And again, it's one of those things where, you use the technology, it's convenient, family let themselves into the neonatal unit, but actually the impact of that goes much further beyond just the immediate kind of utility of it. And what I realized when we did some evaluation around that with families, I thought that they were probably getting frustrated when they had to ring a doorbell and then wait for someone to answer it. But what I realized consistently from the feedback we got from families, that it wasn't their frustration. They weren't, angry about having to wait. They were just worried. They were really anxious that if someone couldn't answer the door straight away, something must be going on with the baby, and that they must be distracted by that. And if something was going on with the baby, it must be their baby. And we heard that consistently from families. And we realized that actually allowing them to let themselves into the unit also gave them a sense of shared space. Why should they have to ask permission and wait to see their own child? When you stop and think about it, it's ridiculous, and it's interesting. We get a lot of questions about what about security, you know? Well, my response to that is, well, who is going to care more about the security of their child than a parent, you know? So absolutely, that's another great use of technology that has made a huge impact for our unit, and the staff love it because they're not having to answer a doorbell all the time. It's reducing the noise in the unit as well. So many benefits, but especially the ones for families.
Yeah, no, I think that's an absolute must in NICUs, as we believe parental presence is important. One of the things, it was so interesting introducing that technology to our unit. Again, that the staff concerns around the technology, as you said, there were staff concerns around, well, could families walk in on something happening with their baby that they really would want to be prepared for before they walk in. And I think one of the things we notice is all those anxieties actually have fallen away, because again, as that relationship between parents and staff has developed, if parents arrive to their baby's bedside and there's something going on that they didn't know about, they are glad that they're there and somebody will step out and tell them what's going on. It's not that they should be there. Like that's what's important. They should be there. The babies belong to their parents. They do not belong to us. And I think whatever we do to remind us of that is important. And the people who take care of these babies when they go home are parents. So we have to really help grow those parents so that they feel confident and competent when they go home. So
yeah, that's so fantastic to think of. Yeah, the biometric scanner. It's not an idea that I ever would have thought of. And as soon as you started to talk about it, I was like, oh yeah, I remember having to stand there and ring the buzzer and wait for someone to come. And it creates such a mental barrier to the place and what you're supposed to be doing. So it's very heartwarming to hear that that's something that's becoming more commonplace, and hopefully will show up in the NICUs that it isn't in yet.
Yeah, and what's been really great, I mean, with a lot of these technologies is they go beyond the NICU. You know, it really delights me when I walk around our hospital now, because I see it on the pediatric wards and in the PICU that they've all adopted that same approach with the biometric scanners, and they've also used the other technologies that we use as well. And so it's great that, ideas from families and really ideas that have been allowed to blossom because of the family integrated care approach are now spreading through NICUs, from NICU to NICU, but then to other areas of the, not just pediatric hospital, but to the adult hospitals as well. It's great, yeah. And it shows how this family-centered approach, this family integrated approach is the right one, and that happily we've been leading the way sometimes in our parts of the world. So again, huge credit to Karel and her colleagues, because they've been inspiring so many people across the world.
I think, but huge kudos to the group but Neil and his team, because really you've carried it forward, I would say. One of the things that's, we've talked about technology for promoting parent-infant attachment. The other things that technology has really been able to help, I think, is parents being present on rounds and being able to contribute to medical rounds. And that's something that we've been sort of working with now for a number of years. And that it's really, really helped parents who, for example, if mom is there present for rounds, but dad is at work, being able to join remotely for rounds with their baby. So that's been a great success in our unit. And the other thing I think that people have really adopted is using technology to facilitate some parent education. It's not as good for the peer-to-peer support piece of that education, so that's my only sort of caution there. But it has grown some peer support as well, even on Zoom platforms. You can still get to know people, but it's really. But I think using technology so the parents who can maybe not able to make a parent education session or for timing or whatever, we've been able to facilitate those by using technology. So there's a lot of change going on, and I think going back to Neil's point, we have to keep making sure we're doing what parents need with this technology, that we're addressing their needs. That it's not us just putting another layer of barriers, that we're actually making sure that we address their needs.
I think that's so important, like you say, to keep the focus on what are the problems and the challenges that need fixing, not just what's the newest technology we might be able to bring in. We're coming up on the end of our time together here today, but I wanted to give you each a chance just to share any final thoughts that you wanted to around the discussion or anything that's been brought to mind today. So Neil, if you wanted to start with us for us.
Oh, great. Thanks, Janet. Yeah, I mean, I've really enjoyed the discussion. It's been fantastic, and it's been thought-provoking for me as well. Perhaps back to one of your earlier questions, which is how can families, how can parents, how can anybody listening help to drive technology in the NICU? And I would say, share your ideas, share your thoughts. There may be a role for, this group to collectively say, look, we think these are the priorities, these are the challenges we want to help solve. And it goes back to that strong sense that we've come to have, which is we need to be helping to articulate those challenges, articulate those problems, so that people are developing the right solutions and not trying to impose the wrong ones on us. And the other thing that, again, I would stress is absolutely we need to be making sure that we're taking everyone with us, that we're not creating more inequities between who gets the benefits and who doesn't, and we have to actively think about that when we're bringing in new technologies. And to Karel's point as well, what in this kind of post-COVID era in healthcare, as in so many sectors, we're seeing how important it is to support our colleagues and the workforce, because that's how we're going to deliver the best possible care for patients and their families. So technology has to be designed with them as well in a way that's going to improve their experience and their work and support them. And we were chatting about this the other day and saying, what is the next innovation area that we should focus on? What's the biggest problem? And we started talking about parking and how everybody, whether it's the patients and the families or the staff, the biggest thing that causes them a problem in the morning is finding somewhere to park. So maybe that's where we need to start with the next technology. But I think we definitely need to be thinking about technologies that serve everybody and don't just create more work or more problems or more inequity. So that's the challenge for us next, and hopefully continuing to use technology in the right way to absolutely support a family integrated approach that is about parents being present and being able to care for their babies.
It's really hard to add anything to what Neil has said. That's been a really comprehensive response, Neil. Thank you. What I want is I want Neil to reach out to us as his group think of new things, and also I think the Canadian Premature Baby Foundation could really. I think there's such a group of parents here that it would be really great to actually hear from those parents and to hear what they think we should be looking at next, and to involve them at this higher level, like Neil was saying, really the higher level of sort of brainstorming about the technology and then talking about the design and then the implementation. And this can only, our focus is really on parental engagement and family integrated care, and we keep that at the forefront. So please, Canadian Premature Baby Foundation, help us grow this and help us grow. Going back to Neil's group, helping us grow. I think that's what we need. And it's been great to have this ongoing relationship, and how we're going back and forth and learning from each other across the world is really pretty amazing.
I think that's wonderful. Thank you both so much for taking the time out of your day today to join us and talk about this. And I'm sure there will be so many ideas and comments and thoughts that will come to people. And, obviously this will be available on the replay, and people can comment, then, or they can send things in to everyone, so that we hopefully have another conversation not too long in the future of all the new things that have come about.
Thanks so much. Really enjoy joining you.
I think we need it yearly from all the things that Neil's doing.
Or we need to have, as you said, an international collaboration around this.
Yeah,
as well.
I think it's amazing. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you both.
Bye-bye.
And that was Dr. Karel O'Brien, who's a neonatologist in Toronto, Canada, and Dr. Neil Patel, who's a neonatologist in Glasgow, Scotland. And as I mentioned, this discussion will be available for replay on our website, on YouTube, on Facebook. So if you were just joining in and caught the end, you can go and watch the beginning again. Or if you know someone who should be watching and listening, please share the link with them. And also a reminder that Preemie Chats will be back next week at the same time. 1 p.m. Eastern Time. It happens every Friday. And I'd also like to take a moment now to thank you for joining us today, and also to thank our sponsors. And our sponsors for today were AstraZeneca. Their ongoing support of our educational programs is most welcome. And vCreate, which is the secure video services platform created for NICU parents that is now used by hundreds of hospitals around the world. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend.